What's up guys and gals, and welcome back to another Division 2 build video. If you happen to be new to the channel or you're just enjoying the content, then please be sure to ground and pound that like and subscribe button. Also, reach up there, trigger the bell, and turn on post notifications, so that way you never miss a live stream or a video that is uploaded. Well, the hooply-la, people throwing up their arms, pulling out the pitchforks and torches, just going on a complete cry fest about this particular build. And I can understand why it can trigger some people once they face it in especially the DZ and PvP. I mean, I can see, the marks of their tears all the way over here. But I'm not only going to show you the best emerging meta title update 6, but I'm also going to show you how to counter it. So have no fear, Relentless is here. So we're going to get into the build, then we're going to get into some gameplay, and then I'm going to get into the counter somewhere in between. But sit back, here we go. Alright, it is the infamous 3-piece Negotiators Dilemma. But unlike my previous ones, my PvE and more or less PvP versions, this one also accompanies clutch. Now the premise behind this, let's start with the Negotiators Dilemma in case you do not know or have not come across this build yet. But 2 pieces gives you 30% explosive resistance. The 3-piece talent gives you the blowback. Launch a grenade at the target that depleted your armor. Can occur once every 3 seconds. Requires the demolitionist specialization. Now let's think about that when compared to clutch, because clutch gives you 20% of your missing health back and 1% armor. So once someone takes off your armor, you're hitting landing shots on them, it gives you a little bit of your armor back. 3 seconds later, they take off the rest of your armor, and rinse and repeat every 3 seconds. So that is the premise. But on these knee pads, I have 8% crit chance, 67 power, skill power, 2% reload speed, and 4.5% bleed damage. And there's no need for the defensive mod because I'm utilizing clutch that requires you to use 4 or less defensive attributes. Now on to the holster. I have 10.5% health, 15% crit hit chance. I'd rather have a 40,000 or so number value instead of the 10.5%, so that way I can get it up to like 220, 225k health. It's just I haven't come across one yet. But my other one has this 9.5% health and 41,000 health. That's what got me over 302k health on my other build. But in the utility mod slot, once again, the defensive mod slot is a waste. You're wanting the 4% explosive damage and the skill power. Now on to the mask, 23,859 health and 54% damage to elites. And it's damage to elites because I still use this for PvP and PvE, and even been doing heroics with it, and it is completely awesome. So once I find one with that amount of health that I can actually put the 11% crit chance that I have on this mask, then I can run it with an SMG or an AR and still be at crit cap. So now let's hop into the chest piece. It is a suck me off chest piece with 4.5% crit damage, 4% crit chance, 54,595 health, and 9.5% headshot damage. And of course, yes, I would much rather that 9.5% headshot damage actually be weapon damage. That would make it absolutely perfect. And then of course, Berserk. 8% weapon damage for every 20% max armor depleted. You can go with a Fenris chest piece here, but since you have Vital on a backpack, then you can either go with Destructive, which would be the actual perfect way, because then you would get 40% explosive damage. But since I'm primarily only focused on SMGs, and I have yet to do an SMG build in all of the Division 2, so I figured I'd start with this one. And it works good and awesome with clutch and this build. And it has an offensive mod slot, 2.5% weapon damage, 3% SMG damage, and 2% assault rifle damage. Now on to the gloves. It is the Outsummit gloves. We're not worried about the skill haste, but when it comes to gloves, it is one of the best in slots because you can have a max attribute roll. I only have 10%, but he can get to 12. And the Motherly Love gloves that you can get for Outsummit can be crafted and possibly have 13% weapon damage or whatever it gives you. And if you keep rolling them up, you can get one that has 13% SMG damage. And then we're utilizing clutch. Critical hits restore 20% missing health and repair 1% missing armor. And that also requires that 4 or less defensive Legos. And an offensive bot slot, which makes them one of the best gloves in slot for any build when it comes to DPS and damage wise because of that offensive mod slot. I get an additional 3% SMG damage and 2% all weapon damage and 2% LMG damage. Now on to the weapons themselves. There are multiple different ways, so it just depends on your personal preference when it comes to SMGs. I actually like the MP5N. It has 21.1k base, and I'm utilizing Sadist, plus 30% weapon damage to bleeding enemies. After 3 kills, apply bleed to the next enemy you hit. Allegro and Cannon. While equipped, this weapon increases throwing distance by 10%. Kinda helps the distance when it comes to my grenades, and the bleed that I get from the Stinger Hive directly correlates and synergizes with the Sadist to give me that 30% weapon damage. And then on top of that, it also procs what's on my backpack, and that is Spark, damaging enemies with a skill, such as the Hive, or explosives grant 15% weapon damage for 15 seconds. So, just off Sadist and this, that's 45% weapon damage. And then my attributes are 34,708 health, 6.5% crit hit damage, and 3.5% weapon damage with Vital. And then it has a utility mod slot, and again, reload speed. And the reason why I went with reload speed instead of like bleed damage or explosive damage, except for the one, and if I had another reload speed utility mod, I'd much rather it be that. Because as we all know, when it comes to clutch builds, that if you're not shooting, you're not critting. If you're not critting, you're not healing. So that is why I want the reload speed, since I primarily use just one SMG with the Chatterbox Bladdermouth talent as my secondary. But you can use 2 SMGs or whatever weapons you prefer. This is just my go-to. Because I get the rate of fire buff, 15%, and the MP5N is already at 880, so it works out well. But if you want to run, the Vector, for me, when my potato aim, it spits out rounds so fast, by the time I start shooting it, I've already missed half the clip, and then I'm only left with 15 bullets, and that's not really enough to really do anything. So I need a little less RPM for my potato aim. And then on my holstered talent sidearm, we're utilizing protected reload because I'm primarily using only one SMG. But essentially, apply bleed here, get the weapon damage boost from here and here from by way of Sadist and of course Spark. But like I said, if you just would prefer Strain just to go straight up, then you don't necessarily need the Spark. But if you're going to utilize a Hive, then you might as well, because that's 15% damage because you're damaging them with a skill or an explosion. And plus, if they happen to survive the grenade that comes from your chest, or if you're getting shot from behind that comes from the grenade that comes from your ass, and they survive it, then you're going to get 15% weapon damage because they got damaged by an explosive, and that grenade is going to cause them to bleed. So once again, they synergize really, really nicely. So now let's go over the stats themselves, starting first with the MP5N. There is the PvE and PvP with 53.5% crit chance, 44% crit damage, 60% headshot damage, 2-second reload time. And then we have only 8% all weapon damage because I'm missing that weapon's damage on my chest piece. And then we have 41% SMG damage bonus, 29% explosive damage altogether. But if you add Vital to that, then that would be at 69%. Not Vital, I'm sorry, Destructive. 100,606 health regen, 30% explosive resistance, 50% pulse resistance. Alright, now I'm going to send you over to some gameplay, and then we're going to come back here and talk counters. I'll see you in a moment. Alright, well, I hope you enjoyed the gameplay. Now let's talk about counters. Now, the grenade blowback from the dilemma is actually the dilemma, right? Because that's what is getting people all in the uproar. Well, the counter to this is simple. It's not necessarily just the build, a build that you need to counter it, but you have to keep in mind that whoever's shooting you, that once your armor is popped, it does fire a grenade, but it fires a grenade to where that target was when it popped your armor. So if you move in any direction, 5 or 6 feet, front, back, left, or right, and strafe while actually you're shooting, then the grenade is going to shoot and fall and blow up where you were and not where you are. That's the most common thing and common counter to this build, and you always got to remember that. And if you face somebody in the dark zone with this build and know that they're running it, once their armor is about popped, then all you need to do is move 5 or 6 feet in any direction, and that grenade will blow up to where you were and not where you are. But if you have a hard time with the whole strafing thing or getting out of a way, or multiple people are using this build, then here is another way. Use the exact same build. I know you're like, I don't want to use that build. I get it. But you only use 2-piece Negotiators Dilemma for the 30% explosive resistance. And you can run Berserk Clutch if you want to, or run it my other way without the Clutch and go with Wicked. And then for mask wise, you want to mask something along the lines of this: 112% hazard protection just on my mask, 10% for 1-piece yaw gear, 52% hazard protection as an attribute roll, and then perfectly insulated, 50% hazard protection. And I know I'm one defensive Lego over for Clutch. That's why for this particular one I have to use it the other way with Wicked. But if that 13,644 health happened to be anything other than a blue, then it would work perfect with this build, and I would still have decent amount of health at 186.6k. But if you have better health rolls on other pieces, then your health pool will actually reflect that, and you'll probably have much more than what I have now. But that is one particular way. But not just that. Hold on, because I know what you're thinking. That's not going to be a direct counter for that. You're crazy. Well, think about it. This requires the Demolitionist. Well, what is another specialist that you could use to counter that? Sharpshooter, double heals, headshot damage. I don't know. How about the new specialization, the Technician? And instead of the Hive, I know you're not going to like me for saying this, but use the Defender Drone. But Relentless, why would I use the Defender Drone? Because on that talent tree, you not only get 50% skill power to whatever you have to help strengthen, your chem launcher for a little extra healing, but with the Defender Drone, or any skill, but the Defender Drone works best, once your deployed skill is destroyed, they shoot it, they destroy it, you get a proc of 30% of your armor. So just think about it. Just bear with me. Let me paint this picture for you. You already have 30% explosive resistance, right? You have hazard protection on there in case they're utilizing Hive to help you fend off things with bleed, any kind of status effect whatsoever underneath the Division 2 sun. So if you're using Clutch, for instance, you're utilizing the same thing, but that grenade from their chest is going to be nullified by that 30% explosive resistance. And right as your armor is popped, if you throw up a Defender Drone, you can still replenish your health and get a little bit of armor from your crits. But if you can't land your shots, then you can't get that. But your Defender Drone will protect you for the most part of it. And then once it's destroyed, it'll give you 30% armor, so that way you can let your health regen kick in, let your chem launcher, kick in or whatever. And if, you stagger or they're reloading, which is if they're reloading, they're not healing either, and you'll be able to resist more or less that grenade, frontal assault, then you'll be good to go. And also, one other thing with that new specialization, the 3.11.7 builds of old, just with the perfect talents, which is the exact same build that it was in Title Update 5, it just goes under different names and different pieces now, but it's essentially the exact same. And I know some of the utility mods, or all of them, got really cut significantly, thus also the auxiliary mods did as well, so that build of the same pieces with the same whatever specialist would be drastically lost in a lot of skill power. But with that new Technician, 50% skill power, boom, you're back up to where you was. You have the perfect talents where you're getting the same amount of damage as you once was. But it's the same concept with Bloodsucker and the Defender Drone. And here is why. Because Bloodsucker and Berserk and Clutch together, mainly Clutch, and since they're utilizing Clutch with Berserk, they feed off one another. Berserk, when for crits, you get health, and you get that little bit of armor. Well, Bloodsucker rips off armor from Berserk and gets procs of bonus armor on top of their armor. And it's a never-ending cycle, back and forth, that constantly feed off one another. One gets a little bit of armor back, one takes it off, they both getting, their heals and their procs back and forth. And if you just implement 2 pieces of Negotiator Dilemma for the 30% explosive resistance, you'll be good to go. And plus, you'll still have killer skill power to toughen up and even strengthen your Defender Drone even more, and have killer heals to back it up. But that are just some of the major two ways to help you defend off this, I guess, endemic or pandemic or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, just know the counters and the ins and outs of your builds, not just the good aspects of them, but also the counters to them, so that way you can counter somebody that's trying to counter you. Just know the ins and outs of your build. But this is Relentless. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it's been informative, and we'll see you guys fudging later. On
Ben pulse. Contact.
Yeah, how'd that work out for you, dude? Man. Oh no, it's the bad man.
I can't do it.
It's the bad man. Oh no.
Should just do a video. Farming the DZ. Stand in one place, wait for the same nut to keep coming out. Here he comes. Good Lord, look how he melting his ass.
How'd that work out for you? Just me and you,
He
bro.
hurt himself.
You know that didn't really bother me, right?
Oh my God.
Try again.